Hi there, everyone. We're going to pick up on James and the Giant Peach. I read to you on Monday, and we reached, I believe, chapter 29. Yep. And we're going to start there and read a couple more chapters. Next week, we'll read it until we finish. It probably won't take us all week, and then I'll get you started on a new novel. So today, we're going to read chapter 29 and possibly 30 of Roald Dahl's James and the Giant Peach. It seemed like a long time before the seagulls were able to pull the peach away from that horrible rainbow cloud, but they managed it at last. And then everybody gathered around the wretched centipede and began arguing about the best way to get the paint off of his body. He really did look a sight. He was purple all over, and now that the paint was beginning to dry and harden, he was forced to sit very stiff and upright as though he were encased in cement, and all 42 of his legs were sticking out straight in front of him like rods. He tried to say something, but his lips wouldn't move, and all he could do was make gurgling noises in his throat. The old green grasshopper reached out and touched him carefully on the stomach. But how could it possibly have dried so quickly, he asked. Well, it's rainbow paint, James answered. Rainbow paint dries very quickly and very hard. I detest paint, Miss Spider announced. It frightens me. It reminds me of Aunt Spiker and the late Aunt Spiker, because the last time she painted her kitchen ceiling, my poor darling grandmother stepped into it by mistake and then was still wet, and there she was stuck, and all through the night we could hear her calling to us saying, "Help, help, help!" And it was heartbreaking to listen to her, but what could we do? Not a thing until the next day when the paint had dried, and then of course we all rushed over to her and calmed her down and gave her some food. Believe it or not, she lived for 6 months like that, upside down on the ceiling with her legs stuck permanently in the paint. She really did. We fed her every day. We brought her fresh flies straight from the web, but then on the 26th of April last year, Aunt Sponge, the late Aunt Sponge, happened to glance up at the ceiling and she spotted her. "A spider!" she cried. "A disgusting spider! Quick, fetch me the mop with the long handle." And then, oh, it was so awful I can't bear to think of it. Miss Spider swiped away a tear and looked sadly at the centipede. "You poor thing," she murmured. "I do feel sorry for you." "It'll never come off," the earthworm said brightly. "Our centipede will never move again, and he will turn into a statue, and we shall be able to put him in the middle of the lawn with a bird bath on top of his head." "Well, we could try peeling him like a banana," the old green grasshopper suggested. "Or rubbing him with sandpaper," the ladybug said. "Now, if he stuck out his tongue," the earthworm said, smiling a little, for perhaps the first time in his life. "If he stuck it out really, really far, then we could catch hold of it and start pulling, and if we pulled hard enough, we could turn him inside out and he could have new skin." There was a pause while the others considered this interesting proposal. "I think," James said slowly, "I think that the best thing to do," and then he stopped. "What was that?" he cried quickly. "I heard a voice. I heard someone shouting." They all raised their heads, listening. "Shh, there it is again." But the voice was too far away for them to hear, and it was saying, hear what it was saying. "It's a cloud man," Miss Spider cried. "I just know it's a cloud man. Then they're after us again." "It came from up above," said the earthworm, and automatically everybody looked upward, everybody except Centipede, who couldn't move. "Ouch," they said. "Help, mercy, we're going to catch it this time." For what they now saw swirling and twisting directly over their heads was an immense black cloud, a terrible, dangerous, thundery-looking thing that had begun to rumble and roar even as they were staring at it. And then from high up in the top of the cloud, the faraway voice came to them once again, this time very loud and clear. "On with the faucets," it shouted. "On with the faucets! On with the faucets!" Then 3 seconds later, the hole underneath of that cloud seemed to split and burst open like a paper bag, and then out came water. They saw it coming. It was quite easy to see because it wasn't just raindrops. It wasn't raindrops at all. It was a great solid mass of water that might have been a lake or a whole ocean dropping out of the sky on top of them. And down it came, down, down, and down, crashing onto the seagulls first, and then onto the peach itself, while the poor travelers shrieked with fear and groped around frantically for something to catch hold of. The peach stem, the silk strings, anything they could find, and all the time the water came pouring and roaring down upon them, bouncing and smashing and sloshing and slashing and swishing and swirling and surging and whirling and gurgling and gushing and rushing and rushing. And it was like being pinned down to the earth by the biggest waterfall in the world and not being able to get out. They couldn't speak, they couldn't see, they couldn't breathe, and James Henry Trotter, holding on madly with one of the silk strings above the peach stem, told himself that this surely must be the end of everything at last. But then, just as suddenly as it had started, the deluge stopped. They were out of it, and it was all over. The wonderful seagulls had flown right through it and had come out safely on the other side. Once again, the giant peach was sailing perfectly through the mysterious moonlit sky. "I am drowned," gasped the old green grasshopper, spitting out water by the pint. "It's gone right through my skin," the earthworm groaned. "I always thought my skin was waterproof, but it isn't, and now I am full of rain." Look at me, shouted the centipede excitedly. "You've washed me clean. The paint's all gone, and I can move again." "Well, that's the worst news I have ever heard in a long time," the earthworm said. The centipede was dancing around the deck, turning somersaults in the air and singing at the top of his voice. "Oh, hooray for the storm and the rain! I can move and I don't feel any pain. And now I'm a pest, the biggest and best, the most marvelous pest once again." "Oh, do shut up," the old green grasshopper said. "Look at me," cried the centipede. "Look at me. I am freed, not a scratch nor a bruise nor a bleed. To his grave this fine gent they all thought he had sent. I very near went, oh, I very near went, but they sent quite the wrong centipede." How fast we are all going all of a sudden, the ladybug said. "I wonder why." "I don't think the seagulls like this place any better than we do," James answered. "I imagine they want to get out of it as soon as they can." They got a bad fright from the storm that they've been through. Faster and faster flew the seagulls, skimming across the sky at a tremendous pace, with the peach trailing out behind them. Cloud after cloud went on either side of them, ghostly white in the moonlight, and several more times during the night the travelers caught glimpses of cloud men moving around the tops of these clouds, working their sinister magic upon the world below. Once they passed a snow machine in operation, with the cloud men turning the handle and a blizzard of snowflakes blowing out of the great funnel above. They saw the huge drums that were used for making thunder, and the cloud men beating them furiously with long hammers. They saw the frost factories and the wind producers, and the places where cyclones and tornadoes were manufactured and sent spinning down toward the earth. And once, deep in the hollow of a large billowy cloud, they spotted something that could only have been a cloudman's city. There were caves everywhere running into the cloud, and at the entrance of the caves, the cloudmen's wives were crouching over little stoves with frying pans in their hands, frying snowballs for their husbands' suppers. And hundreds of cloudmen's children were frisking all over the place and shrieking with laughter and sliding down billows in the cloud on toboggans. An hour later, just before dawn, the travelers heard a soft whooshing noise above their heads, and they glanced up, and they saw an immense gray bat-like creature swooping down toward them out of the dark. It circled around and around the peach, flapping its great big wings slowly in the moonlight and staring at the travelers, and then it uttered a series of long, deep, melancholy cries and flew off again into the night. "Oh, I do wish the morning would come," Miss Spider said, shivering all over. "It won't be long now," James answered. "Look, it's getting lighter over there already." They all sat in silence and watched as the sun came up slowly over the rim of the horizon for the next day. And that's where we're going to stop. We will start on Monday with chapter 32. Enjoy your Easter, and I will see you back here on Monday, and we'll probably read a couple more days and we'll be done. Thank you for listening to a little bit more of Roald Dahl's James and the Giant Peach. Stark County Families.